Hello, this is Luke. This is part two of a series on automating song selection or sound selection. And before we dive into the code, I just want to overview the the approach that we're going to take to trying to solve this problem. So I've broken it into four steps here. First, we're going to be preparing data for the machine learning model. So kind of we'll actually be using code to scrape some past files. If you happen to have past files, that's great because machine learning takes a lot of input, a lot of sample data. So I'm going to show you how I went about that with my database. Then the next part is going to be actually training the machine learning model. I might not get it too deep into that because I know there are lots of tutorials online about image classifiers, and I basically used those in order to develop that aspect of it. But I will, at least touch on it. And then third is going to be post processing. So how are we actually going to take that machine learning output and figure out what it means for our wave file? And then finally, the actual selecting of the songs themselves, like the actual boxing of them. And if that doesn't make a lot of sense, that's okay. That's why I'm going to go through them. But I want to just demonstrate on the wave file just what the general approach is going to be for this model. So as I said in the first video, we've got this spectrogram. In this case, it's an hour long, and it's all these different hermit thrush songs mainly that are being sung. And I'll give you another sample similar to the first one, just briefly, so you can hear. I just want you to hear, like, this is a hermit thrush song right here, but this isn't right here, and that's going to be the important thing, is to hear the difference between those two. So just have a listen. So you could hear that as it went through this red box, there was another sound kind of there. And you can see it again actually here. It's just another bird. It's another species of bird. It's not our hermit thrush. And this is really the problem, or at least maybe the hardest part of the problem, is that we can't just go through here and start boxing anything we see. We actually want it to be smart enough to figure out what's a hermit thrush and what's not. And as a researcher, I can tell, because I've spent many hours selecting hermit thrush songs, I can tell that this is a hermit thrush song and this isn't. And hopefully with whatever sound detector that you're trying to build, you can tell what's what. If you can't, then you're kind of in a different subset of the problem. That doesn't mean it's insurmountable or not solvable, but what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to build something that can kind of do what a human already can do. So a human can already identify hermit thrush song from other birds, and I want a computer to be able to do that. So that's kind of the approach I'm going to be taking, is with the assumption that a human can tell the difference. And what I'm going to be doing is essentially cutting this whole spectrogram up into frames. So if you can imagine, I'm just going to like sweep along, taking basically like photographs of the spectrogram in overlapping frames like this. And you can see it's almost like a camera moving from left to right, just taking picture here, 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 and moving across. And we're going to feed that into a machine learning model that's really just, well, what it's called is a binary image classifier. And that's just kind of a fancy way of saying it looks at an image and says yes or no. And the question it's being asked is this a hermit thrush song? Yes or no? And what it'll spit out is a probability of, like, oh, I think it's a 90% chance that it's a hermit thrush song, or I think it's 100% chance that it's a hermit thrush song. And it'll do that at each of these frames as it sweeps along the entire recording. And so what we're going to get at the end of that is this big long string of probabilities moving from left to right, from the very, very beginning of the recording right here, all the way to the far end at the end of the recording right here. And it'll just sweep along saying essentially yes, no, 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 yes, yes, no, 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 yes, yes, but in the form of a probability. So really it'll kind of go along and say 90% chance here, and then the next frame 50% chance, and then next frame 0.01% chance, whatever it might be. And so after that, we're going to have a big string of probabilities, and then we're going to go through the post-processing stage. So that's after we've done the model, and we're going to take that string of probabilities and figure out how we can essentially decide where these songs are based on those probabilities. And then finally, actually use those locations to select the notes or the songs that we want to identify. So in that case, what that looks like for me in my line of research is we actually draw like a little box around the intro note of each hermit thrush song. So here's one here and here. You can see these are now blue boxes, 9, 10, and 11, and then 12's here. And that's just specific to my research, is we want these little intro notes because the pitch of those matters for what we're studying, and we use that information. But that could be different depending on what you're looking for, right? You might not have a specific intro note that you want to grab. Maybe you have something, much bigger or taller, or maybe much wider. But the idea is that you have something on this spectrogram that you want to box around and select, so that you can analyze it, maybe order it, maybe take some statistics for it. So that's the general approach. I'm going to go through these steps throughout the videos, kind of taking you through each one. I don't know if it'll be 4 videos or if it'll be more, but these are either way, this is kind of the framework that we're going to follow. Is we're going to prepare our data, we're going to build the model, we're going to use some sort of post-processing to like take the model output and make it more meaningful, and finally we're going to actually build these selections, these boxes around the individual aspects of the spectrogram. So the end result will be essentially a Raven file. This program is Raven, and it's used for studying birdsong. But the output at the end will be boxes around the things we want boxes around, and hopefully not very many boxes around the other things, say like this, that looks really similar, but actually is a different bird. And so we want it to be good enough that it can find the good things and not find the bad things, I guess, as it were. So that's the approach. In the next video, we'll actually dive into preparing the data and move on from there.